Hari Om. Start with a prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Vishnum Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. So, with all the preparations or prerequisites and the appropriate mental frame, one should approach a teacher and ask appropriate questions that clarifies his vision of the reality. So, depending upon the question and the student mentality, teacher provides you. So, teacher himself recognizes that the student has already prepared the mind. Because in olden days, the student goes to a teacher, and teacher doesn't immediately teach. He asks me, you stay here for a year or two, and then when I find is appropriate, at that time I will allow you to ask the question. So therefore, the student used to come and live there and serve the teacher, and in the process, the teacher observes the mental evolution of the student, how prepared is he, how active he is, and how sharp he is. All that he observes, and only after that says, now you can ask the appropriate questions. So depending on the questions, you can see what is the nature of the student mind, what exactly he wants. And therefore, in every Upanishad, each questions are different, and the answers are provided by the teachers appropriately, depending upon the qualifications of the student. Here in this Vivekachudamani, the student goes, and teacher, knowing that the student is completely evolved, he found out that the student has the Shraddha, required faith, and that is we defined as Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya Satya Buddhyavadarana Sa Shraddha, the one who knows that the Shastram, the scriptures are indeed true, and the teacher's interpretation of the scriptures is also true, and that faith is required to continue to study, because one cannot study the scriptures directly, and one has to depend on the teacher, and therefore the teacher himself should have been acquainted with the scriptures, and therefore that faith is to be required. That means my teacher is realized, should be and have a firm faith in the disciple's mind, otherwise he will not have complete Shraddha in the teaching. Whether the teacher realizes or not is not the point, but the student has to realize that my teacher has realized. As Shri Shankara gives, there are three types of teachers. One is Shastrajnaha and Brahmanishta. One is the knows the Shastras and also is firmly abiding in the Shastras. He is the ideal teacher. And second one is who is Shastrajnaha, but he may not be abiding in the teacher. And he is the second teacher, second level teacher. And the third one is who is Brahmajnaha, but doesn't have the Shastra. So he doesn't know how to teach the Shastram, but he is firmly abiding in the Shastras. And Shankara says the third one, even though he is realized and he knows the Brahman, he cannot be a teacher, because he needs to communicate. For that, he should have the clear way of how to communicate to this student who is not in the same state of mind, and therefore you have to come down to the student level and uplift him, and a Brahmanishta alone cannot do it. So he put a namaskaram to him, but don't go and try to learn from him. The first teacher is the best, but I do not know whether my teacher is Brahmanishta or not, but I know he is a Shastrajnaha. So once I know whether there is a Brahmanishta or not, whether the first kind or the second kind teacher, the one who knows the Shastras, I have to assume he is Brahmanishta, and I can realize it, whether the teacher realized or not. Therefore, one should approach a teacher who has already learned from the scriptures and also how to teach from his teacher. And that's why we mentioned there is a Sampradayam and there is a Guru Parampara is also implied in the teaching itself, in approaching a teacher. This student in the Vivekachudamani asks a question. This is a very famous sloka in the Vivekachudamani, and this where he crystallizes the question. So when you crystallize it, when depending on how you present your question, the teacher understands clearly this person has already thought about it and able to crystallize what exactly he needs to know, and he really appreciates such a kind of student who has thought about it rather than talk about half an hour, I have a question sir, and then went on talking for half an hour without knowing what exactly his question is. So one should be able to think deeply before even one asks the question, and then clarifications can only be gained from the teacher. Someone asked the Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananda, says, why do I need a teacher? The scriptures are available, bhashyas are available, I can go to the library and get the knowledge. And Swami Chinmayananda said, then why are you asking me that question? If you can even ask that question to the library, and library will tell you whether you need a teacher or not. So therefore, I need a teacher for proper understanding and interpretation, because as Vivekachudamani says, it is like entering into a forest. Unless I need a proper guide, I will be going round and round and round thinking that I am going somewhere. I will not go anywhere else. I need a proper teacher to tell me. In the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a story that Uddalaka gives his son Swetaketu in terms of why you need a teacher. It says, a fellow was kidnapped from the town and taken to the forest, and after robbing him and blinded him and left it in the forest. Then this person says, please teach me, tell me where am I, please help me, please help me. He was shouting and shouting desperately because he doesn't know where he is and he cannot see anything else. He doesn't know what is the right direction and where is to go to Gandhara city from where he came, and he doesn't know what the directions to it, all that he doesn't. And when he keeps on shouting and screaming for help, a compassionate person hears it, goes there, and he removes the bondage. That means he removes the ajnana part and then shows him the direction. You go this way and you will encounter these obstacles. You turn left here, you turn right there, and ultimately you will reach your town, Gandhara. That means the direction is required for anything, and for those who are confused, really, otherwise you will be more confused. And one cannot go to another teacher who is already confused. The blind cannot lead the another blind. You need a proper teacher to approach, and that is what essentially implied in going to an appropriate teacher. In this questioning, a student puts a crystallized thoughts here, and here is one of the famous slokas of the Vivekachudamani. It says, Ko nama bandhaha kata esha agataha katam pratistasya katam vimokshaha kosavanatma paramah ka atma tayor viveka katame taducyatam ko nama bandhaha kata esha agataha katam pratistasya katam vimokshaha kosavanatma paramah ka atma tayor viveka katame taducyatam. So this is one sloka where he puts 7 questions in that. That means you can see how he has already thought about it and he is asking these questions. It says, Ko nama bandha. So first 4 questions are related to the bondage. So what is the people call bondage? What is really bondage? Please tell me what is exactly bandham, bondage, because I don't see any tying here, and where is the bondage and what exactly is the bondage? Ko nama bandha. Katamesh agata. How did it come into picture? How did the bondage, how did we got bound by this? And katam esha agataha. Katam pratisthasya. Katam pratishtha. How is this firmly abiding? And says, how did it came and how did it get established? In other words, not only it's coming and going, it seems to be binding me so long because I have spent life after life after life, many lives, or so many lives I have been in this bondage. How did it get established in this bondage? How did I get established in this bondage? Katam pratishtha, katam vimoksha, and how do I get out of this bondage? So all 4 questions. What is the name of the bondage? How did it come? How did it grow? How will it go? So all these 4 questions lead to the first of the bondage itself. Then 3 more questions. Kosa anatma paramah ka atma tayor viveka katam etad uchatam. So what is anatma? So Kosavanatma. What is anatma? What is called anatma? And paramah ka atma. What is that supreme atma? Please teach me that also. Tayor viveka. And what's the difference between the two? How do we discriminate what is anatma and atma? And please viveka, because nitya anitya vastu viveka is required. Says, how do I discriminate these two? Katham etad uchatam. Please teach me all this. So he asked the question. 4 questions are related to the bondage, and the 3 questions essentially related to what is the anatma, what is atma, and what's the distinguishing features of these two. So there are 7 questions asked in one sloka, and listening to such a crystallized thoughts and the questions that were posed by the disciple, and teacher was so happy because people don't ask properly and expect some answers, and asking questions itself is appropriate. Even in science, you have to ask proper questions to get the correct answer, or even to inquire, you have to raise the proper questions. And we assume as though we know, and we go on without completely analyzing the system. So essentially, the Sishya provides this basis for the further teaching. So he asks about bondage first. So what is the bondage? How did it come? And how did it grow? And how will it go away? All this is related to the bondage, and what is anatma and what is atma, and how do we differentiate these two? These are the 7 questions. And the teacher was so impressed by the student, he glorifies the student, says, you have the best questions, you have well prepared. And this is exactly the same way even in Kathopanishad, when Yama looks at the Nachiketas and he gives 3 boons, he asks 2 boons, and the 3rd boon he says, please teach me Atma Vidya, and he crystallizes his questions. And Yama was so happy to hear, and he glorifies the student itself, says, you are the best student that I have got. So teacher also appreciates if the student is very good and poses a good challenging questions for the teacher to teach. And this is the case even in the Vivekachudamani student also. So although the questions were asked in that order about the bondage, what is bondage, how did it come, how did it grow, and what's the liberation, method of liberation from the bondage, and about anatma and atma and their differences. The teacher reorganizes the questions and answers in the way that he thinks he should answer. So the first question that he answers is liberation. How do I get